Hello, I'm David T. Little, chair of the Department of Composition at the Mannes School of Music here at the New School, and here with my colleagues Missy Mazzoli and Ian Rosenbaum. We are thrilled to share with you today just a sliver of what Mannes Composition and Percussion have been up to in this last semester as we, like all schools, have made the unexpected move to socially distanced teaching and learning. A special project that represents not only the collaborative spirit and the aesthetic openness of our programs, but also confirms our belief that no matter the obstacle and at whatever distance, we can persevere and find new ways that are both meaningful and fun to create work together that is original and beautiful. It's my pleasure now to turn it over to Missy and Ian, who are going to talk a little bit about this special project and about today's program, House Music.
So when New York went on lockdown and Mannes made the shift to online learning, Ian and I were thinking of ways to keep our students engaged. I'm always thinking of ways to keep the students in my composition studio writing. And it's hard to do that when you don't have a live performance on the horizon. So in collaboration with Ian, we came up with this idea of pairing composers with percussionists and having the composers write works for whatever instruments that percussion student had in their house. So as Ian will describe in a second, there's a huge range of setups that are in each of these performers' houses. And the assignment was that the composer had to work with whatever was given to them. And this is, it's not just a sort of pandemic specific project. This is kind of comes out of a long tradition of composers using everyday objects and having to respond to really difficult situations. And so the first example that I can think of is, John Cage's works from the late 30s and early 40s, pieces like First Construction, living room music from 1940, which he wrote for his wife and her friends to play on household objects because they didn't have the money to have to rent or buy actual percussion instruments. And there are a lot more recent works throughout the 20th and early 21st century that sort of do similar things. Think pieces like Rzewski's To the Earth, a piece for flowerpots and speaking percussionist. And two of my favorites, Thierry Demay's Table Music from 1987, which is for percussionists literally playing tabletops, and David Lang's The So-Called Laws of Nature, which uses a bunch of sort of household objects, flower pots, teacups, pieces of wood, pieces of metal. So we're, inspired by this tradition of works, but also wanted to create works that were really responding to this very particular extreme moment. So I'll turn it over to Ian to tell you a little bit more.
Yeah, so when we first paired our percussionists and our composers together, one of the first things we had to figure out was what percussion instruments all of the performers had at home, and that kind of dictated what the composer was allowed to write for. And so you'll see that some of the pieces use handheld, home-found instruments like cereal bowls or wine glasses or metal cans, and some of the pieces use more traditional instruments that you would see in a concert hall. It just depended on what the student had. And so after we sort of figured out what the instrumentation of each piece was going to be, and we shared a little bit some of the pieces that Missy was just talking about that sort of exist in this tradition, then in a pretty rapid period of time, the composers wrote a 2 or 3 minute piece. The performers learned that piece and sort of workshopped it a little bit back and forth with the composer, and then they made recordings at home. And that's what you're going to hear today.
Thank you so much, Missy and Ian. We're really excited to have you all with us today for the world premiere videos of these 4 new additions to this long tradition of percussion repertoire. And we invite you to join us after the pieces for a talk back with the 3 of us and the composers and percussionists, all from Mannes. Thanks so much. Enjoy the program.
Hi everyone, my name is Scott Fish. I'm a composer. And when I started writing this piece, we were really deep into quarantine at that point, and I was using Zoom multiple times a day, every day of the week. So I started thinking about the word Zoom and the concept of zooming. So my piece is called Zoom, and it really deals with acceleration and accumulation of not only tempos, but material. And Yueyi, when I started writing this, she told me she only had one actual percussion instrument, which was a triangle. So we had to compare notes on what we had in our cupboards, which turned out to be glass jars and coffee cups and lids to things. So yeah, you want to talk about your experience learning this piece?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Yueyi Liu, and I am percussionist. For me, when play this piece at the very beginning is to picking the sounds and setting up all those instruments, which is pretty hard. I have to think of it considerately with moving through the whole piece. So I made few versions of setup to see which is the best. And this is also the idea I discussed with Ian that he inspired me. So making the shape of moving smoothly without my two hands fighting with each other, that is the best setup for this piece. And during the practice, the feature of this piece is always making the gradual accelerando, which is hard to control. But I work well with the Scots giving me the tempo click, and it helps me to make the rhythm more stable. I really appreciate to have this opportunity to work with my partner, Scott, and I learned a lot from this experience during this hard quarantine time. It is quite meaningful. Hope you guys enjoy the recording. Thank you.
Hope you enjoy. Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Thomas Nickell. I am the composer for this piece. The piece is called Leaks, which is a reference to Kurt Vonnegut's novel Slaughterhouse-Five, which actually has inspired a lot of the pieces I've written recently. Just I think that's probably because I read it and then started writing a piece, and it just kind of molded itself with my thinking about the music. And since then, I feel like the concepts are very I don't know, widely applicable to not just musical thinking or literary thinking, but just about the world in general. And I don't know, I think the concept that stuck out for this piece in particular is the concept of a leak, which is brought up by Kurt Vonnegut's sort of alter ego in the book Kilgore Trout, the science fiction writer, who talked about how he thought of mirrors as leaks in a way into other dimensions. So that when you're looking into a mirror and you're actually seeing yourself in another dimension entirely. So that concept of, I guess, being directly able to look at yourself directly opposed in an entirely different place that's not at all connected to where you are is, I don't know, something that is interesting to think about right now, especially where we spend so much time at home. We're looking at our screens, our computers a lot. We're watching television shows. We're on YouTube. We're listening to music. So we're constantly in contact with this non-material world. So I guess to bring that about in the piece, I talked with Anne about the instruments she had, and she mentioned that she had a marimba, which, given that that's it's just a physically imposing instrument, I thought that would be the best one to use as sort of the heart of the piece. So I'm a pianist myself, so I'm also accustomed to an octave equally divided in 12 pitches. So I decided then maybe I'll use a digital piano that I retune to an octave of 43 pitches. So I have this completely, separate world that's a similar sound, but rather than 12, it's 43. So I recorded some music on that, and then just decimated it through all sorts of audio processing, and created an electronic track for Anne to play with. So. And then I wrote the percussion part to, fight with the pre-recorded electronic track in whatever way. So, yeah, that's about how Leaks came about. Yeah, Anne, you can go ahead.
And I'm Chang and Yeh, and I'm a percussionist right now. And first of all, I very appreciate that I have this opportunity to work with Thomas, such a great composer. And as the topic, leak, I think I can feel that so many little small motivation for your work, and connect with from the top to the end. And also the music style, I think, is a little bit mysterious and dramatic. And I like the balance for the electronic track with percussion instruments, so that is really a special thing for me. But overall, I really enjoy a lot to play this, but unfortunately we don't have that much time to complete that work. But this is really a good piece, and I hope everyone can enjoy that and very liked it. Thank you.
Okay, well, I hope you all enjoy the piece. Thank you to Chia-An again for the incredible work playing it. Okay.
Thank you too.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Wyatt. I'm the composer of the next piece.
Hi, I'm Zikun Zhao. I'm a percussionist.
And our piece is called Love Letter, and it is for Zikun alone in a room. I kind of came up with this piece after writing a note to my mother, oddly enough, and I sort of I realized that the sound of writing a letter and the kind of this act of considering someone that maybe isn't present in the room with you, I thought was kind of powerful and really relevant for this time we're living in now. And so I basically wrote an instruction sheet with some art on it as well, essentially instructing Zikun to write a letter, and there were some extra instructions about sort of teacups and various things kind of mimicking, I was imagining kind of like prayer bells or something sort of memorializing maybe an individual who you can't be with right now. And Zikun took that and ran and did some amazing things. So maybe this is when you should talk about your experience with the piece and kind of how it came to fruition for you.
Yes. So during this coronavirus situation, lots of people can't go back to home, especially the international students like me. So I think Jonathan's idea was fantastic. And I began to write a letter, and I thought the best way to do it is use classical Chinese. So I think it's more can express myself. And first I began to write a letter on the snare drum. And for a while I began to read it and play through the teacup and the bottle. And yeah, I think it's amazing.
Great, awesome. Could you maybe talk about the text you're reading? I mean, I'm not a Chinese speaker, so I'm just listening to it audio, but I'm always curious, kind of the ideas you're expressing in the text.
Yes, so it's basically I write to my mom, and it's basically I'm very homesick, and I told her some experience when I stuck in my house, and I put two pictures on this soundtrack. First is my whole setup, and second is my letter. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we hope everyone enjoys. This is our piece, Love Letter. We're excited to share it.
埃及感怀赋。某月日，此景只属于景阳嘉末，长鬓无恙，心神。云雨额别，风壤异乡。春主青山，别意回南。任天下之际，肆虐于民。寒风萧瑟，生灵涂炭。数日如求于世，望天则亲一人。天道周行，悲不自胜。日暮途远，人间何事？三尽酒荒，浊酒一杯，唯忆忘忧。行者有良人伴于侧，皆须思矣。如在远，不宜过虑。务必固身且修心。追为逝者，是日七赏则为长，阡陌十里，终为于此时不及。昔有诸之，时之渐长，虽日日一贯，仍自得此中之乐。愿住景于泛舟曲水，尽享心汉之忧。故追忆此赋，聊以寄言。
Hello, my name is Zachary Catron. I'm a composer and recent graduate from Mannes School of Music.
Hello, I'm Charlie Zhang, and I'm still in Mannes master degree and in percussion major.
And today, Charlie's going to perform my Cereal Box Sonata, which is a lighthearted piece about making cereal, featuring slogans from popular American cereal brands. And we hope you enjoy. Thank you.
Hope you enjoy.
靠。For Coco. For kids.
Hello, everybody. That was so great. Can everyone hear me all right? Am I coming through? All right, great. So hello, everyone out there on the internet. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for house music. It was a really fun and interesting endeavor for us to kind of feel our way into this new time of online learning here at Mannes at the New School. I'm David T. Little. I'm the chair of the composition program. I wanted to sort of just start off the conversation by talking to the composers and performers in their pairings, starting out, going in concert order, and just thinking about this question of collaboration and this question for the composers of letting go. I think as composers, we can sometimes be kind of control freaks. And I noticed in some of these pieces that there was a lot of freedom that perhaps the situation that we all found ourselves in kind of demanded. And I was wondering if we could start just by talking about that. So we have the first, I see so many faces on my screen right now, but where's Scott?
Right here.
Hey, Scott. You know, we've worked together and I know your music really well, and it is very often concerned with pitch. This piece had zero dictated pitch. It was really reliant on the instruments, the objects that were being chosen. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that process for you, and was it difficult to sort of give up the world of pitch, or did it feel really good?
Yeah, it was difficult. It was funny because I was actually in this crazy time. I was at my girlfriend's mom's place upstate, and so when Yueyi was like, hey, I have a few mugs and a triangle, like I collected mugs from this cupboard that I wasn't even familiar with. And so only kind of had that in front of me, and then obviously pitches are different, sizes are different. So yeah, I think the thing I let go of most was exact pitch and instrumentation. And Yueyi, I was like, whatever it's going to be. And I just kind of notate it as like, this is a high sound, this is a low sound. And then kind of let Yueyi take control from there.
And Yueyi, for your part in this, did you find that you sort of had additional responsibility beyond what you would normally have preparing a piece that was, say, a fully notated marimba piece, or did it feel about the same in terms of preparation for you?
I think we care more about sounds that we have because the restriction of instruments, like we have the glass jar, like I use the protein powder jar, and I also use the aluminum foil to cover the practicing pad to try to make the sounds special, though it's, the sounds is pretty small sometimes. But I try to follow Scott's idea of what sounds he wants. And I'm trying to find similar instruments, though they're the same instruments, but different sound of it. So make it higher pitch and the lower pitch to make it sounds different. And so that after that, I just do the setup, and it is pretty hard because I have to move really smoothly so that a lot of 16th notes and 30-second notes can doing fast and accurate. Yeah.
I really appreciated in your piece that there was also, I think, a sort of a yogurt container maybe as a music stand.
I put the pad on the jar, and also I just use the filter net to hang the triangle because I have nothing to hang it, and it was in the cupboard, and I was putting the phone in the cupboard, so let the camera show to record this angle. Yeah.
That's great. I love the angle. It was really great to see. It's sort of it felt like a video from the Modern Drummer Festival, the sort of overhead. I'm exposing myself as a teenage drummer, but it was really great. Congratulations, both of you. It's really beautiful. Really beautiful.
Thank you.
So Thomas's piece was next, right?
Yeah.
This piece I found really fascinating because unlike in Scott's piece where, Scott removed all pitch, you added 2/3 more. And I know you've been really exploring this world of microtonality in your work recently, and also working with software to sort of create these sonic worlds. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that process for you.
Sure.
And how that relates to this question of the found objects, because you didn't really have too many found objects. You really had mostly sort of proper instruments, but you used them in interesting and unique ways. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we basically stopped being able to go to school. I spent obviously more time at home, being able to experiment with different things and plunging deeper and deeper into microtonality, for better or for worse. And when this came about, and Chia-An said she had a marimba, I couldn't quite let go of wanting to be able to use more than 12 notes to the octave. So I combined that with an electronic track to kind of be able to have the best of both worlds, I guess. And then also to create this mirrored, but not so much mirrored duality between these two worlds. Yeah.
And I have to ask, Thomas, I know you have this Vonnegut influence in this work, and you really seem to capture this kind of dystopian, dark mood that we're all feeling, if not all the time, then at least sometimes. And I'm just wondering, how was that a reflection of the quarantine times, or is that just kind of where your head is as a composer at this stage in your development?
I think that was definitely a reflection, probably. Working on the piece, I mean, I spent a lot of time just basically taking sounds and drawing them out and trying to take everything I could out of one small bit of sound. So you're like hyper concentrated. And I think when you do that, you tend to sort of inadvertently go to some kind of a dark place, especially when you're in a time like this. So I would imagine that's how that channeled in there in some way.
Anne, I wonder if I could ask you about playing this piece. What was it like to be communicating with the electronics part along with what you were playing? Is this something that you've done before, or is this one of your first experiences with something like that?
Actually, this is my first experience to play the audio with percussion instruments. But I think the difficult thing is because most of paragraph and it's very free for play that. And you have to catch the time when the timing is. And also we put in the marimba part in this piece. It's really a big challenge to play, like one hand I play the wood block and one hand play the marimba part because I'm very short, so it's really hard to play the like high pitch and low pitch at like immediately. So but overall, it's really enjoy to play that because the good melody and as we said, we can hear the it's a little bit dark feeling in the piece. So it's really like shoot on this period, like we are experienced like a rough time. So it's really enjoy a lot. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. That's great.
So, Jonathan, I was really fascinated also knowing your work and knowing how interested in pitch you are and in rhythm in the sort of like traditional nuts and bolts, right? That you sort of went completely the other way and wrote instructions for this piece.
Yeah. I was definitely I think I made a conscious decision early on that I wanted to write something that maybe wasn't rehearsed in a traditional way. I just felt kind of weird about like writing notes on a page and asking someone to practice them. I think this was like early on in quarantine. I was like, I can't get my head around writing notes right now, so I don't want to get anyone, or force anyone to like read them. So instead I focused entirely on concept. So this letter writing concept sort of became all-consuming for the piece in a way that kind of, for me, it's very akin to like the Fluxus word piece movement and Pauline Oliveros, and so the sort of gray area between like music and poetry and visual art and kind of exploring conceptually that regard. And also I kind of wanted to make a piece of music that was about the quarantine without ever saying that it was about the quarantine. It was sort of more about distance than anything, but I think in a way that's like what we were all feeling at this time in April, whenever, this was done.
And I absolutely love the sound of the writing on the snare drum. That it was like I was almost in tears. There's just something about it that's so intimate and personal. So did that idea come about as a result of the collaboration, or was that something you had in mind to try ahead of time?
So I think the snare drum, writing on the snare drum instruction, I came up with kind of on the spot as I was creating the piece. I knew I wanted to amplify the sound of the pencil and paper, and I thought the best way to do that would be on the snare drum. It's kind of my only option other than miking it, which I think Zikun actually did as well. But yeah, the writing, I definitely wanted to be, kind of the piece is like a binary form of like, you're writing the letter, you're reading the letter. And so the writing was like that texture and that sound, that element was very like crucial to the concept, I guess. It's like half of the material of the piece. If we're calling it material, that's kind of the sound of it. Yeah.
The sound of the recording was amazing. Zikun, how did you record it? I mean, I was just blown away by how clearly we were able to hear the writing and all of the little sounds in there.
I actually put the my phone between my voice and all the setup. So yeah, it can both clearly hear.
That's so great. You know, the phone the phone works for some things amazingly well, like this, and for other things not so well. I'm so glad that you found this method of recording. It's great. So this takes us to our last piece, right? So Zachary and Charlie. It's been a little bit of a saga getting this piece together. So Zachary, could you tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind writing this piece?
Sure. I have a tendency to find that people, when faced with trauma, either go for escapism or go for deep into the nitty-gritty of the problem. I know that's certainly how I have a tendency to deal with it. And in this instance, in May and in April, I chose to go with escapism. And in this instance, I found a chance to, finally do some found percussion. And I realized, what do I have in my house? Oh, it is my million cereal bowls, because breakfast cereal is my favorite snack food. And so this was an ode to that, an ode to trying to have fun with it, and trying to make the best of a very difficult situation for everyone. So yes, this was definitely, this did take a long time to get put together. Unfortunately, my original performer had to drop out. And I mean, this is extremely difficult for everyone, and life happens, and you just got to go with it. And so I'm so grateful that Charlie could come in, and with only a few weeks before our performance could learn the piece, record the piece between traveling and dealing with his own life. So thanks very much for that, to Charlie.
Charlie, yes, we really thank you. So you did step in at the last minute, and I'm amazed by how quickly you learned this really, really challenging piece. What was the experience like for you?
I think it's really cool for me because I'm not using the regular instruments, but it was also a challenge for me because holding a spoon is not really familiar with like a sticks or mallet. So when I play and practice, all I think is like, will I break my ball? Something like that. Yeah, but I think it's really cool experience, but yeah, I don't have a long time, but I try my best to done that.
That's great. I really appreciated the number of different types of playing that were explored in that piece. It felt very encyclopedic, like if there were ever a definitive piece on how to play cereal bowls with spoons, this is it. It was great. And to be able to get such a huge amount of sound and a huge variety of sound from things that we just have all around us is really, going back to the origins of this project, John Cage and these pieces that are written for household objects. It's really something fundamental, the inventiveness behind that, the idea that anything can be an instrument, the idea that anything can make music, is kind of at the core of both being a percussionist and being a composer in the 20th and 21st century. So I really applaud all of you for really diving in and writing some really interesting and really beautiful pieces in unusual circumstances during very stressful times, and using what we could do. It's really a testament to all of your creativity and all of your dedication that we have these new works in the world right now. So thank you all so much for that. It's really great. And to Missy and Ian for having this idea initially, and to Manis and Copa and the New School for getting behind it so wonderfully.